The federal agent's hands stopped moving on his keyboard. He stared at his screen for a long moment, then looked at me, then back at the screen. His face had gone pale. "Sir," he said, his voice strange and careful, "I need to call my supervisor. Could you please wait here?" I sat there in the plastic government chair, holding the manila envelope my grandfather had given me 3 months ago, the same envelope my father had ripped from my hands at my son's baptism, the same envelope everyone had laughed at, the same envelope I had kept hidden in my closet because I could not bring myself to throw away the last gift my grandfather ever gave me. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "No, sir. Nothing is wrong. I just need to verify some information with my supervisor. This is unusual." He picked up his phone, dialed an extension, and spoke quietly into the receiver. I could not hear what he was saying, but I saw his eyes flick back to the computer screen twice. I looked down at the envelope in my lap. It was old, the manila paper soft and yellowed at the edges. Inside were dozens of United States savings bonds, Series E and Series EE, purchased between 1962 and 1985. My grandfather's name was on each one, along with mine as the beneficiary. The oldest bonds were over 60 years old. The paper was brittle, the printing faded, the Treasury Department logos from an era before I was born. My father had said these bonds were worthless. My mother had said I should not embarrass myself at a federal office. My brother had laughed and said the government had stopped paying interest on these things decades ago, that they were just old paper now, worth nothing except as a reminder of how senile Grandpa Harold had become. But I had come anyway, because my grandfather had asked me to. Because 16 years of Sunday visits had taught me to trust him. Because the look in his eyes when he handed me this envelope at my son's baptism was not the look of a senile old man. It was the look of someone giving away something precious. I should have come sooner, but life gets in the way, and doubt creeps in, and when everyone you know tells you something is worthless, you start to believe them. I wish I had not believed them. A door opened somewhere behind the counter, and a woman in a dark suit emerged. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair and the careful expression of someone who had worked in government for a long time. She approached the counter where the agent was sitting and looked at his screen. Then she looked at me, then back at the screen. They spoke quietly to each other. I could not hear the words, but I saw her eyebrows rise. She typed something into the computer. Her expression changed. She came around the counter and approached my chair. "Mr. Crawford?" she asked. "I am Patricia Weldon, branch supervisor. Would you mind coming to my office? This conversation requires some privacy." I followed her through a maze of cubicles to a corner office with a window overlooking downtown Pittsburgh. She closed the door behind us and gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Please," she said. "Sit down." I sat. My heart was pounding. Patricia Weldon settled into her chair and folded her hands on the desk. "Mr. Crawford, how much do you know about savings bonds?" "Not much. My grandfather bought them. He gave them to me before he died. My family said they were worthless." "Your family was mistaken." She turned her computer monitor so I could see it. Series E savings bonds were issued by the United States Treasury from 1941 to 1980. They were designed as a long-term savings vehicle, sold at a discount and paying interest over time until they reached their face value. My father said they stopped paying interest in the 70s. That is not accurate. Series E bonds continued to earn interest for 30 years after their issue date, and in many cases, for an additional 10 to 20 years beyond that. The bonds your grandfather purchased in the 1960s and 1970s have been earning compound interest for over half a century. Compound interest? Interest on interest. The bonds earn interest, that interest is added to the principal, and then the new total earns more interest. Over 60 years, the compounding effect is substantial. She paused. "Mr. Crawford, your grandfather purchased savings bonds every single month from 1962 until 1985. 23 years of consistent purchases, in amounts ranging from $50 to $200 per month. And he never redeemed a single one. Never. Never. Not one. The bonds have just been sitting there, earning interest, compounding year after year." She typed something into her computer. Based on the serial numbers you provided and our records, the total current value of your grandfather's savings bond portfolio is approximately $2,843,000. The room tilted. I grabbed the arm of my chair. That is not possible, I heard myself say. That is not. My grandfather was a mailman. He delivered mail for 38 years. He lived in a tiny house. He drove a car from 1994. He wore the same coat for 25 years. The bonds are real, Mr. Crawford. They are registered in his name with you as the beneficiary. They have been earning interest since before you were born. Her voice was gentle. Your grandfather was a very patient man, and a very wise one. I could not speak. I just sat there, staring at the computer screen, trying to make the numbers make sense. $2.8 million. My grandfather, the mailman everyone pitied, the old man everyone dismissed, had quietly accumulated a fortune in savings bonds and left it all to me. I should have seen it coming. 16 years of signs, all pointing to this exact moment. My grandfather, Harold Eugene Crawford, was born in 1943 in a working-class neighborhood in Pittsburgh. His father was a steelworker, like most men in that part of the city. His mother took in sewing to make extra money. They were not poor exactly, but they were never far from it. One bad month, one layoff, one illness, and they would have been on the street. Harold learned early that security was the most important thing in the world. More important than fancy clothes or nice cars or big houses. Security meant knowing you could pay the rent. Security meant knowing you could feed your family. Security meant never, ever being at the mercy of circumstances beyond your control. He got a job with the post office in 1961, right out of high school. It was not glamorous work, but it was steady. Good benefits. Pension. The kind of job that let you plan for the future. He met my grandmother Edith at a dance hall in 1963. She was a secretary at a law firm downtown, pretty and practical and just as focused on security as he was. They married a year later, bought a tiny house in Homewood, and started the life that everyone in my family would eventually look down on. They had 2 sons, my father Raymond and my uncle Dennis. Raymond grew up embarrassed by his parents' modest lifestyle and determined to escape it. He went to college, got a business degree, worked his way up to regional sales manager at a pharmaceutical company. He married my mother, Vivian, who came from a slightly better neighborhood and had slightly higher expectations. Together, they built the kind of life that looked successful from the outside. Nice house, nice cars, nice clothes, nice vacations. But Raymond rarely visited his parents. He was too busy, he said. Too important. He had clients to impress and quotas to meet and a lifestyle to maintain. My uncle Dennis was not much better. He moved to Phoenix in the 80s and came back to Pittsburgh maybe once every few years, always with excuses about why he could not stay longer. And then there was me, Emmett Wallace Crawford, Raymond's youngest son, the one who became a carpenter instead of a businessman, who married a woman from a working-class family, who lived in a modest house and drove a used truck and never seemed to understand that the whole point of being a Crawford was to be better than where you came from. I was the only one who visited Grandpa Harold. It started when I was 20, right after I finished my apprenticeship and started working as a Finnish carpenter. My grandmother had died the year before, and my father had mentioned, almost in passing, that someone should probably check on the old man now and then. So I drove to his house one Sunday afternoon. I did not know what to expect. I had not spent much time with Grandpa Harold growing up, just holidays and occasional family gatherings where he sat quietly in a corner while my parents and their friends talked about things that did not include him. I found him sitting on his porch, watching the street, looking smaller and older than I remembered. When he saw my truck pull up, his face lit up in a way that made my chest hurt. "Emmett," he said, rising slowly from his chair. "You came to see me. I thought I would check in, see how you are doing. Come in, come in. I will make coffee." Edith always made the coffee, but I have learned. It is not as good as hers, but it is not bad. We sat in his kitchen for 3 hours that first day. He told me about my grandmother, about how they met, about their 52 years of marriage. He told me about the post office, about the routes he walked, about the people whose mail he delivered for decades. He told me about Pittsburgh in the old days before everything changed, when the mills were still running and the neighborhoods still had their own identities. And he told me about the bonds. When I started at the post office, he said, stirring his coffee, they had this program, payroll savings. You could have a little bit taken out of each check and used to buy savings bonds. United States Treasury bonds. Safe as anything in the world. And you did that? Every paycheck for 23 years. Started in 1962. Kept going until 1985 when they changed the program. He smiled. Edith thought I was crazy at first. She said we could use that money for other things. A better car. A bigger house. A vacation somewhere nice. What did you tell her? I told her this was for the future. Our future. Our children's future. Our grandchildren's future. I told her these bonds were a promise from the United States government, and that promise would be worth something someday. Are they worth something now? He smiled that mysterious smile, the same smile I would see many times over the next 16 years. They are worth more than anyone knows. I thought about that conversation often over the years. Every Sunday, without fail, I drove to Grandpa Harold's house and spent the afternoon with him. We would sit on the porch in nice weather in the kitchen when it was cold. We would drink coffee and eat the cookies he bought from the bakery down the street and talk about everything and nothing. We had rituals, Grandpa Harold and I. I would bring donuts from the shop on Murray Avenue, the same shop that had been there since he was a young man courting my grandmother. He would make coffee in the old percolator that Grandma Edith had used for 50 years, the kind of coffee that takes forever to brew but tastes like nothing else in the world. We would sit and watch the neighborhood go by, and he would tell me who lived in each house, who had moved away, who had passed on. The Hendersons used to live there, he would say, pointing to a house across the street. For kids. I watched them all grow up, delivered their Christmas cards for 30 years. Now the youngest one is a grandfather himself. He knew everyone. 38 years of walking the same routes, delivering the same mail, watching the same families grow and change and move on. He had been part of something woven into the fabric of the neighborhood in a way that most people never are. He told me stories I had never heard anywhere else. About growing up during the war years, about the rationing and the sacrifice and the way everyone pulled together because there was no other choice. About starting at the post office when he was 18, so nervous on his first day that he delivered 3 wrong packages before lunch and spent his break sitting on a curb trying not to cry. Mr. Patterson, the senior carrier, found me there, he said once. I thought he was going to fire me, but he just sat down beside me and said, "Son, every mailman makes mistakes. The question is whether you learn from them." I never forgot that. He told me about meeting my grandmother at that dance hall, how she was wearing a green dress and laughing at something her friends said, and how he knew in that moment that he would marry her or die trying. She was the most beautiful woman in the room, he said once, his eyes distant with memory. And the smartest. She could do numbers in her head faster than anyone I ever met. She was the one who figured out how to make the bonds work. How to buy them at the right times, how to spread them out, how to make them grow. Grandma managed the bonds? She managed everything. I just carried the mail and brought home the paycheck. She made it into something. He wiped his eyes with a handkerchief, the same handkerchief I had seen him use 1,000 times. I miss her every day, Emmett. Every single day. 52 years of marriage. And I still reach for her in the middle of the night. I still expect to hear her voice when I come home. I held his hand while he cried. I was 22 years old, and I had never seen my grandfather cry before. It changed something in me. It taught me that grief does not have an expiration date, that love does not end just because someone is gone. After that, my visits became the most important thing in my week. No matter what else was happening, no matter how busy I was with work or life or family, I knew that Sunday afternoon would be peaceful. I knew Grandpa Harold would be waiting on his porch with a pot of coffee and a story to tell and a quiet wisdom that I found nowhere else in my life. My father could not understand it. "Why do you keep going there?" he asked me once, at a family dinner where Grandpa Harold had not been invited. "What could you possibly have in common with an 80-year-old mailman?" We talk. He tells me stories. He asks about my work. He tells the same stories every time. About the post office. About Edith. About his precious bonds that are probably worth about $12.50 by now. You do not know what they are worth. I know enough. I know he bought them in the 60s and 70s when they paid almost nothing. I know they matured decades ago. I know the government stopped adding interest years before we were born. He shook his head. The old man thinks he is sitting on a fortune. It is sad, really. Delusional. He is not delusional. He is 81 years old, and he still thinks savings bonds from the Ford administration are worth something. That is the definition of delusional. He took a sip of his wine. Just do not let him give you any of that junk. It is embarrassing enough that he keeps talking about it. I did not argue with him. There was no point. My father had made up his mind about Grandpa Harold decades ago, and nothing I said was going to change it. But I kept visiting. Every Sunday for 16 years. I got married when I was 28. Her name is Caroline, and she is the best thing that ever happened to me. She grew up in a family a lot like Grandpa Harold's. Working class, practical, focused on the things that actually matter. I brought her to meet him about 2 months after we started dating. This is the one, he said, after she had gone to the kitchen to refill our coffee cups. This is the girl you are going to marry. How do you know? Because she reminds me of Edith. The way she listens. The way she pays attention. The way she does not need to fill every silence with noise. He patted my hand. Hold on to her, Emmett. Women like that are rare. I held on to her. We got married a year later, in a small ceremony at the courthouse because neither of us wanted a big wedding. Grandpa Harold was there, in his best suit, beaming like I had given him a gift. 3 years later, Caroline was pregnant. And 3 years after that, she was pregnant again. And then Wesley was born, our second son, and I knew I had everything I ever wanted. The baptism was held on a Sunday in September, at the church where Caroline's family had worshipped for generations. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends, but it felt important. We were welcoming our son into the world, into the community, into the family. My parents came, of course. My brother Marcus came with his wife and children. Caroline's family came. And Grandpa Harold came, 93 years old now, moving slowly but still sharp, still present, still the wisest person I knew. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the church hall. Sandwiches and cake and coffee, the usual church gathering. My father worked the room like it was a business conference, shaking hands and making connections. My mother stayed close to him, playing the supportive wife. Marcus talked to anyone who would listen about his new promotion. Grandpa Harold sat in a corner, watching Wesley sleep in Caroline's arms, smiling that quiet smile of his. I went to sit with him. He is beautiful, Grandpa Harold said, looking at Wesley. He looks like you did when you were born. Same nose, same chin. I hope he has your patience. Patience is learned, not inherited. But I think he will learn it. I think he has good teachers. We sat together for a while, watching the party swirl around us. And then Grandpa Harold reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. I have something for you, he said. For him. For the whole family. He pressed the envelope into my hands. It was thick, stuffed with papers. What is this? Open it. I opened it. Inside were dozens of documents, each one a United States savings bond. Series E, Series E. Dates ranging from 1962 to 1985. My grandfather's name on each one. My name as the beneficiary. Grandpa, I do not understand. These are the bonds. All of them. Edith and I bought them for 63 years ago, and I have been holding on to them ever since, waiting for the right time. He squeezed my hand. The right time is now. Take them. Do not tell anyone. Just keep them safe until you are ready. Ready for what? To find out what they are worth. Before I could say anything else, my father appeared at my elbow. What is this? Raymond asked, looking at the envelope. What did he give you? It is nothing, Dad. Just some old papers. But my father was faster than me. He grabbed the envelope out of my hands and pulled out the bonds. Savings bonds. He started to laugh. The sound was harsh, mocking. Harold, these bonds matured in the 70s. The government stopped paying interest on these things decades ago. This is just old paper. They are still earning interest, Grandpa Harold said quietly. That is not how it works. Once they mature, they are done. They stop growing. These have been worthless for 40 years. He waved the bonds in the air. Emmett, do not embarrass yourself taking these to a bank. They will laugh you out of the building. Give them back, I said. I am doing you a favor, saving you the humiliation. He turned to my mother. Vivian, look at this. Dad is giving Emmett his savings bonds. The ones he has been talking about for 50 years. The ones that were supposed to make us all rich. My mother shook her head. Harold, honestly, could you not have just given him a check? There is no money for a check, Marcus said, joining the conversation. He spent it all on these worthless bonds when Nixon was president. Face it, Grandpa, you have nothing to give. You never had anything. Give them back, I said again, my voice harder this time. My father looked at me with surprise. Then he shrugged and thrust the envelope at me. Fine, keep your worthless paper. But do not come crying to me when some government clerk tells you these are not worth the paper they are printed on. I took the envelope and held it against my chest. Grandpa Harold caught my eye. He winked. And in that wink, I saw something I did not understand at the time. Confidence. The quiet certainty of a man who knew exactly what he had done. Take care of those bonds, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. They are worth more than any of them know. My father snorted. The dementia is getting worse. Someone should really look into a home for him. Grandpa Harold just smiled. 3 months later, he died. It was a Tuesday morning in December. The neighbor found him in his kitchen, sitting in his usual chair, a cup of coffee on the table in front of him. He had gone peacefully, the doctor said, probably in his sleep or shortly after waking. He was 93 years old, and he had lived a good life. I was the one who identified the body. I was the one who called the funeral home. I was the one who sat in that tiny house, surrounded by 70 years of a simple life, and wept for the man who had taught me what really matters. The funeral was small. A few old friends from the post office, most of them using walkers or wheelchairs. Some neighbors who had known him for decades. The family, of course, though my father spent most of the service checking his phone and my mother whispered to Marcus about something unrelated. I delivered the eulogy because no one else would. My grandfather Harold was a mailman, I said, standing at the podium. He carried the mail for 38 years, walking the same routes, serving the same neighborhoods, delivering letters and packages and parcels to people who came to think of him as family. He was not a rich man by most standards. He did not have a big house or a fancy car. He did not travel the world or build a business empire. By all the measures that society uses to judge success, he had nothing. But by the measures that actually matter, he had everything. He had a wife who loved him for 52 years. He had a home that was always warm and welcoming. He had patience that could wait for anything. He had faith that the future would be better than the past. He taught me that the simple things are the things that matter. A cup of coffee on a Sunday afternoon. A story shared with someone who cares. A promise kept for 60 years. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life. And I will try every day to be the kind of man he was. Not rich in money. Rich in the things that count. My father checked his watch during my eulogy. My mother examined her fingernails. Marcus was looking at his phone. But Caroline was crying. And my sons, too young to understand what was happening, sat quietly beside her, somehow sensing that this moment was important. That was enough. The reading of the will happened 3 days later, at a lawyer's office downtown. My father was there, ready to collect whatever meager inheritance Harold had left behind. Marcus was there too. Uncle Dennis had flown in from Phoenix, making time in his busy schedule to see if there was anything worth having. The lawyer, an old man named Patterson who had known my grandfather for years, read the will in a quiet, respectful voice. To my son Raymond, I leave my house at 3847 Wilkins Avenue, to be sold or kept as he sees fit. My father nodded. The house was worth maybe $120,000. Not much, but something. To my son Dennis, I leave my savings account at Pittsburgh Federal Credit Union. The current balance is approximately $22,000. Dennis looked disappointed. He had flown all the way from Phoenix for $22,000. To my grandson Marcus, I leave my 1994 Ford Taurus and my collection of woodworking tools. Marcus barely suppressed a laugh. A 30-year-old car and some old tools. To my grandson Emmett, I leave the contents of the manila envelope currently in his possession, along with all associated rights and claims. My father's head snapped up. That is it? The bonds? He is leaving Emmett the worthless bonds. The will has been fully executed, Patterson said calmly. The estate is closed. Those bonds are not worth anything, Marcus said. Emmett gets nothing. Same as always. My father stood up, brushing off his jacket. Well, that was a waste of time. At least we got the house. They left. All of them. My father, my mother, Marcus, Dennis. They walked out of that lawyer's office without a backward glance, already discussing how to sell Grandpa Harold's house. I stayed behind. Patterson was watching me with an expression I could not read. Mr. Crawford, he said after the others were gone. Your grandfather was a remarkable man. I know. Do you? Do you really know? I did not understand what he meant. Not then. But I would. The next week I went to the Treasury Department. I had looked up the nearest office online, a federal building downtown that handled savings bond inquiries and redemptions. I called ahead to make sure I could bring in old bonds for valuation, and the woman on the phone had been skeptical but helpful. Series E bonds from the 1960s? She said. Those are quite old. Most have been redeemed by now, but we can certainly look them up in the system. What do I need to bring? The bonds themselves, of course. Photo identification, and proof of your relationship to the original owner if you are claiming them as a beneficiary. I gathered everything. My driver's license, my grandfather's death certificate, the manila envelope full of bonds. I put it all in a folder and set it by the front door so I would not forget anything. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about my father's laughter, about Marcus saying the bonds were worthless, about everyone telling me not to embarrass myself. What if they were right? What if I walked into that federal office and some clerk told me that my grandfather's life savings were worth nothing? But I also kept thinking about Grandpa Harold's wink, about the confidence in his eyes, about the way he had said, "They are worth more than anyone knows." I had to find out. Even if the answer was bad, I had to know. I took a day off work, put on my best shirt, and drove downtown with the manila envelope on the passenger seat beside me. The morning traffic was heavy, and I had time to think about everything that had led to this moment. 16 years of Sunday visits, thousands of hours of conversation, a lifetime of being the family disappointment, the one who never amounted to anything, the one who chose a simple life over success. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had wasted my time. Maybe the bonds were worthless and my grandfather was senile and everything I believed about him was wrong. But I did not think so. Something in my gut told me that Grandpa Harold knew exactly what he was doing, that his quiet confidence was not delusion, that the man who had walked the same mail routes for 38 years, who had saved a little bit from every paycheck for 23 years, who had never touched those savings for 60 years, knew something that the rest of us did not. The federal building was gray and imposing, the kind of architecture designed to make you feel small and insignificant. I went through security, found the right office on the 3rd floor, and took a number like everyone else. The waiting room was fluorescent lit and institutional, filled with plastic chairs and outdated magazines. I sat with the manila envelope on my lap, watching other people conduct their business, wondering if any of them were here with old bonds that their families had laughed at. When my number was called, I approached the counter and handed the envelope to a young agent in a white shirt and tie. His name tag said, "Michael." "I need to find out what these are worth," I said. "My grandfather gave them to me before he died. My family says they are worthless." Michael opened the envelope and looked at the bonds. His eyebrows rose. "These are old," he said. "Really old. Let me look them up in the system. He started typing the serial numbers into his computer. One by one, he entered the information from each bond. I watched his face as he worked, looking for any sign of what he was finding, trying to read his expression. About halfway through the stack, his typing stopped. He stared at the screen. Then he typed something else and stared some more. Is something wrong? I asked. No, nothing is wrong. He looked at me, then back at the screen. Sir, I need to call my supervisor. Could you please wait here? That is when I knew. I sat in Patricia Weldon's office for an hour, watching her and two other officials go through the bonds one by one, entering serial numbers, checking records, making calculations. They spoke quietly to each other, occasionally looking at me with expressions I could not read. Finally, Patricia sat down across from me and folded her hands. Mr. Crawford, your grandfather began purchasing savings bonds in 1962 and continued until 1985. He bought them through the post office payroll savings program, automatically deducting a portion of each paycheck. Over 23 years, he accumulated hundreds of bonds. Yes, he told me about that. What he may not have told you, or may not have fully understood himself, is how the interest on these bonds has compounded over time. She pulled out a calculator. Series E bonds earned interest for 40 years after their issue date. Series E bonds, which replaced them in 1980, earned interest for 30 years. But here is the key. Even after they stopped earning interest, they retained their full value. And many of your grandfather's bonds continued earning interest well into the 2000s and 2010s. So they are not worthless? Far from it. She turned her computer screen so I could see it. Based on our calculations, the total current value of the bonds in this envelope is $2,843,217. I could not breathe. I could not think. I just sat there, staring at the number on the screen, trying to make it make sense. That is not possible, I finally said. My grandfather was a mailman. He made maybe $30,000 a year tops. He could not have saved almost $3 million. He did not save $3 million. He saved perhaps $70,000 or $80,000 over 23 years. But compound interest over 6 decades turned that into nearly $3 million. Patricia smiled gently. Your grandfather understood something that most people do not. Time is the most powerful force in finance. A small amount of money, invested wisely and left alone for long enough, can grow into a fortune. And he left it all to me? According to the beneficiary designations on each bond, yes. He updated the designations in 2018, specifically naming you as the sole beneficiary. She paused. He knew exactly what he had, Mr. Crawford, and he knew exactly who he wanted to have it. I drove home in a daze, the manila envelope on the seat beside me, the redemption paperwork folded in my pocket. Nearly $3 million. My grandfather, the mailman everyone dismissed, the old man everyone pitied, had quietly built a fortune one bond at a time and left it all to me. Not to my father, who had called him senile. Not to Marcus, who had laughed at his worthless paper. Not to Dennis, who could not be bothered to visit more than once a year. To me, the one who showed up, the one who listened, the one who sat on the porch every Sunday and treated him like he mattered. Caroline met me at the door, worried by the look on my face. What happened? What did they say? I handed her the paperwork. I watched her read it, watched her face go through the same transformation mine had gone through hours earlier. $2.8 million, she whispered. Yes, from savings bonds. Bonds your family said were worthless. Yes. She sat down on the couch, the papers falling from her hands. Our sons were playing in the next room, oblivious to the fact that their lives had just changed. Why? She asked. Why you? I knew the answer. I had known it for 16 years, every Sunday, sitting on that porch with coffee and conversation. Because I showed up. Because I listened. Because I saw him. The confrontation with my family happened 2 weeks later. I did not plan it. I did not want it. But my father found out about the money the way people always find out about these things, and he demanded a meeting at his house. When I arrived, they were all there. My father pacing by the window. My mother perched on the edge of the couch. Marcus leaning against the fireplace with his arms crossed. Even Dennis had flown back from Phoenix, apparently deciding that nearly $3 million was worth another trip. $2.8 million, my father said, before I even sat down. My father had $2.8 million in savings bonds, and he left it all to you. Yes, to you, the carpenter, the one who never amounted to anything, the one who wasted every Sunday of his life visiting an old man who everyone knew had nothing. He had something. You just could not see it. I saw plenty. I saw a man who lived in the same tiny house for 60 years. I saw a man who drove the same car until it fell apart. I saw a man who talked about his bonds like they were made of gold when everyone knew they were worthless. They were not worthless. I know that now. My father's voice was bitter. Now I know that my own father hid a fortune from me for my entire life. Now I know that he let me think he was a pauper while he was sitting on millions. Now I know that he left it all to my son instead of his own sons. You did not visit him. What? You did not visit him. In the 16 years after Grandma died, you visited him maybe 6 times. Maybe less. You called him on his birthday. You sent a card at Christmas. But you never sat on his porch. You never listened to his stories. You never treated him like he was worth your time. I was busy. I had a career. I had responsibilities. You had excuses. The same excuses everyone has when they do not want to do something. I looked at each of them in turn. When was the last time any of you visited him? When was the last time you called just to talk? When was the last time you treated him like a human being instead of an embarrassment? Silence. That is what I thought. This is fraud, Marcus said. Grandpa was obviously not mentally competent. No one in their right mind hides millions of dollars in savings bonds for 60 years. We can contest the beneficiary designation, claim undue influence, claim he did not understand what he was doing. He updated the beneficiaries in 2018. He went to a notary. He had witnesses. He knew exactly what he was doing. I stood up. You can try to contest it, but the government has records going back to 1962. Every purchase documented. Every interest payment calculated. Grandpa Harold was sharper than any of you knew. He just let you believe what you wanted to believe. This is not right, my mother said. Family money should go to family. It did go to family. My wife, my sons, the people who will remember him with love instead of embarrassment. I walked to the door, then stopped and turned around. He knew. At the end, he knew exactly what each of you thought of him. He heard every comment about his worthless bonds. He heard every joke about his senility. He heard Marcus say he had nothing to give. And he decided that you were right. He had nothing to give to people who never showed up. But he had everything to give to the one person who did. You manipulated him, Dennis said. You spent years manipulating a lonely old man so he would leave you his money. No, I spent years loving a lonely old man who everyone else had abandoned. The money was a surprise. The love was the point. I walked out. I did not look back. It has been 6 months since I learned the truth about Grandpa Harold's bonds. The money is invested now, most of it, growing the same way Grandpa Harold grew it. Patiently, steadily, with a long-term view that values security over everything else. I work with a financial advisor who understood immediately what I wanted to do with this inheritance. I want to protect my family, I told him at our first meeting. I want to give my sons what my grandfather gave me, security. The knowledge that no matter what happens, they will be okay. He nodded like he understood. Your grandfather was a wise man, he said. Most people cannot resist touching their savings. They see a number growing and they want to spend it. But he understood that the real power of money is not what it can buy. It is the peace of mind it provides. He lived simply his whole life. And he died wealthy. That is not a contradiction. That is wisdom. We paid off our house. The modest 3-bedroom in the neighborhood where Caroline grew up. Where we brought our sons home from the hospital. Where we have built our life together. I thought about buying something bigger, something in a nicer part of town, something that would make my father jealous. But Caroline talked me out of it. We love this house, she said. Our neighbors are our friends. The boys' school is right down the street. What would moving prove? That we have money now? I do not want to prove anything to anyone. She was right. She is usually right about these things. We set up college funds for both boys. Tyler can go to any school he wants, study anything he wants, become anything he wants. Wesley has 18 years for his fund to grow before he needs it. Neither of them will ever have to choose between their dreams and their debt. We put money aside for Caroline to start the small catering business she has always dreamed about. She used to cook for friends and family, elaborate meals for birthdays and holidays that people talked about for months afterward. Now she is planning her own business, designing menus, looking at commercial kitchen spaces. I never thought I would have the chance, she said once, looking at property listings online. I thought this was just a dream, something I would never actually do. It does not have to be a dream anymore. She cried when I said that. Happy tears. The kind of tears that come when something you never thought possible suddenly becomes real. We gave some of the money away to the Postal Workers Benevolent Fund that helps carriers and their families in times of need, to the church where Grandpa Harold and Grandma Edith got married, to a scholarship fund at the local high school for kids who want to learn a trade. Your grandfather would have liked that, Caroline said when I told her about the scholarship. Helping kids who want to work with their hands. Kids like you. Kids like him. He was a working man his whole life. He would have wanted to help others like him. But I still work. I still get up every morning and put on my work clothes and go to job sites and build things with my hands. I still come home tired and satisfied, with sawdust in my hair and calluses on my palms, and that particular exhaustion that comes from creating something real. You could retire, Caroline says sometimes, watching me stretch out sore muscles at the end of a long day. You do not have to work anymore. I know, but Grandpa Harold worked his whole life, even when he did not have to. He could have cashed in those bonds at any time and lived like a king. But he kept delivering mail. He kept showing up. And I think I understand why. Why? Because the work was never about the money. It was about having a purpose, about contributing something, about being part of something bigger than yourself. I smile. Besides, I like building things. I like seeing something take shape under my hands. I like knowing that something I made will still be standing decades from now. She understands. She always understands. My father has not spoken to me since the confrontation at his house. Neither has Marcus or Dennis. My mother sends occasional texts, awkward attempts at reconciliation that never mention the money or Grandpa Harold or the 16 years I spent visiting while the rest of them stayed away. I do not respond to her texts. I am not sure what I would say. I am not angry anymore. I am just tired of pretending that we are a family when we never really were. I visit Grandpa Harold's grave every Sunday. I bring a cup of coffee, the same brand he always drank, and I sit on the grass beside his headstone and I talk to him. Sometimes Caroline comes with me. Sometimes the boys come too, though they are too young to fully understand why we go. This is your great-grandpa. I tell them, pointing at the headstone. He was a mailman. He walked all over Pittsburgh delivering letters and packages to people. He did it for 38 years. Was he nice? Tyler asks. He was the nicest person I ever knew. He always had time to listen. He always had a cup of coffee ready. He always made me feel like I was exactly who I was supposed to be. Wesley, too young to understand, just reaches out and pats the headstone like he is saying hello. Wesley is getting big, I tell Grandpa Harold during my visits. He is walking now, getting into everything. You would love him. You would love watching him explore the world, touching everything, figuring out how things work. Tyler started kindergarten this year. He is learning to read. He asks about you sometimes. He wants to know about the great-grandpa he barely remembers. I tell him stories, the same stories you told me. Caroline says hello. She misses you. She misses the way you would sit quietly and listen, really listen, when someone was talking. She says that is rare. She is right. Dad still has not called. Neither have Marcus or Dennis. I do not think they ever will. They cannot forgive me for receiving something they think they deserved. They cannot understand that you gave it to me because I gave you something first. I miss you, Grandpa. I miss our Sundays. I miss your coffee and your stories and your quiet wisdom. I miss the way you made me feel like I was enough, exactly as I was. The wind moves through the trees. A bird sings somewhere nearby, and I like to think he can hear me. I like to think he knows. There was a letter I should mention, not in the envelope with the bonds, but at the lawyer's office. Patterson gave it to me after everyone else had left. Your grandfather asked me to hold this, he said. He wanted you to have it privately. I took the envelope home and opened it that night, after Caroline and the boys were asleep. Dear Emmett, it read, if you are reading this, you went to the Treasury Department. I am glad. I was starting to worry you never would. I know what they said about the bonds. I know your father laughed. I know they all called me senile, called me worthless, said I had nothing to give. I heard every word. But I also know you kept the envelope. You did not throw it away. You did not let them convince you I was crazy. You trusted me even when everyone else told you not to. That is why the bonds are yours. Let me tell you the story. When I started at the post office in 1961, they had a program where you could have part of your paycheck automatically used to buy savings bonds. I signed up on my first day. Your grandmother thought I was foolish. She said we needed that money for rent, for food, for all the things young couples need. But I had a feeling that if I just put a little away, every paycheck, and never touched it, it would turn into something someday. Something that would matter. Edith came around eventually. She always was smarter than me about money. She figured out the best times to buy, the best denominations, the best way to make our small contributions grow. Together, we bought bonds for 23 years. And then we waited. 50 years, Emmett. 50 years of watching those bonds sit in a drawer, earning interest, compounding year after year. 50 years of your father and your uncle asking why we did not spend it, why we did not live a little, why we insisted on being poor when we could have been comfortable. We were not poor. We were patient. There is a difference. I could have told them what the bonds were worth. I could have shown them the statements, proved that I was not as foolish as they thought. But I wanted to see who they were when they thought I had nothing. I wanted to see who would show up, who would care, who would treat me like a human being instead of a disappointment. You showed up, Emmett. Every Sunday for 16 years. You listened to my stories. You drank my coffee. You brought your wife to meet me and then your children. You treated me like I mattered, even when everyone else had decided I did not. That is worth more than any amount of money. And that is why the money is yours. Use it wisely. Take care of your family. Give your sons the security that I always wanted for my own children. And remember that the richest person in the room is not the one with the most money. It is the one who knows what really matters. I love you, grandson. I am proud of you, and I will be watching, from wherever I end up, to see the man you become. Your grandfather, Harold. P.S. Your grandmother wanted me to tell you something. She said you reminded her of me when I was young. Quiet, patient, willing to wait for the things that matter. She would have loved watching you grow up. She would have been proud. I sat in the dark for a long time after reading that letter, tears running down my face. My grandfather had given me more than money. He had given me proof that the way I chose to live my life, the values I held, the relationships I prioritized, all of it mattered. All of it was worth something. The manila envelope sits on my dresser now, right where I can see it every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to sleep. The bonds are gone. Redeemed, converted into investments that will grow and protect my family for generations. But I kept the envelope. I kept it because it held my grandfather's faith for 60 years. His patience. His quiet belief that good things come to those who wait. And now it holds mine. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I have left 2 more stories here on your screen. Both from men who discovered that family is not always who you are born to. It is who stands by you when the truth comes out. Click on whichever one calls to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be the outsider looking in, that notification bell is your invitation. Until tomorrow, remember, your story matters, even if they tried to erase it.